Hello friends, welcome to a new topic today. In this chapter, let us now learn about inhalational anesthetic agents. Okay, so if you see, the inhalational anesthetic agents can be divided into two types. One, we have newer agents, and second, we have older agents. What are the newer agents? Newer agents include halothane, isoflurane, sevoflurane, desflurane, enflurane. So these are the newer agents. What are they? Halothane, isoflurane, sevoflurane, desflurane and enflurane are the newer agents. Then what are the older agents? Older agents include, we have ether, chloroform, cyclopropane and trialine. Older agents include, we have ether, chloroform, cyclopropane and trialine. These are the older older inhalational anesthetic agents. Now, what we have to learn about some important terms. The first term is about minimal alveolar concentration. What does minimal alveolar concentration means? Minimum alveolar concentration is the minimum amount of the inhalational agent which will produce no movement on surgical stimulus. That means minimum amount of minimum concentration of inhalational agent which is required for producing anesthesia in 50% of test patients is a minimum alveolar concentration 50. Okay, then we have MAC 45 also. What is this MAC 45? This minimum alveolar concentration 45 is equal to 1.3 to 1.5 times that of minimum alveolar concentration 50. If you see, minimum alveolar concentration is inversely proportional to potency. That is, if we require less concentration of an anesthetic, of an inhalational anesthetic to produce no movement on surgical stimulus, then that means it is more potent, right? So this is the order of minimum alveolar concentration for these drugs, which is, if you see, for halothane, minimum alveolar concentration for halothane it is 0.75, for isoflurane it is 1 to 1.3, for sevoflurane it is 2, and for desflurane it is 6. So this can be remembered like this. See, for halothane it is 0.75. If you add 0.75, you have almost 1.5, right? 1.5 is it's like 1 to 1.3. It's almost similar, right? Now 1. If you double 1, you have 2. If you double 2, it's almost 4 or 6. Okay, you can remember like that. So what is the most potent among all? Halothane is most potent among all the these inhalational anesthetics, whereas desflurane is least potent among all the inhalational anesthetics. Okay, then what is the least potent inhalational anesthetic? So the least potent inhalational anesthetic is nitrous oxide, whose minimum alveolar concentration is 104. The least potent inhalational agent is nitrous oxide, which has minimum alveolar concentration of 1.4. What is the most potent inhalational agent? Most potent inhalational agent is methoxyflurane. But we are not using this methoxyflurane because of its nephrotoxicity. Okay, now we have a rule which is called as Mayer-Overton's rule. What is this? Mayer-Overton's rule states that potency of an inhalational anesthetic is directly proportional to lipid solubility. That means if the lipid solubility of an atom increases, then the proportion of minimum alveolar concentration of that agent will potency of inhalational agent or minimum alveolar concentration of that inhalational agent will increase. Okay, that is Mayer-Overton's rule. Then we have to learn few points about minimum alveolar concentration. This minimum alveolar concentration, what are the conditions which increase the minimum alveolar concentration and what are the conditions which decrease minimum alveolar concentration. So first we will see the conditions which decrease minimum alveolar concentration. See, you can remember like this. In minimum alveolar, the conditions which decrease minimum alveolar concentration, everything will decrease except carbon dioxide. Okay, this will decrease everything except carbon dioxide. So whenever there is hypoxia, hypovolemia, hypothermia, hyponatremia, hypocalcemia and hypercapnia, carbon dioxide will increase. All these conditions will decrease minimum alveolar concentration. And as age increases, minimum alveolar concentration decreases by 6% per decade. As age increases, minimum alveolar concentration will decrease by 6% per decade. See, in acute alcohol intoxication, there will be decreased minimum alveolar concentration. Why? Because it's very simple. Alcohol will cause respiratory depression. So, as a result, it causes decreased minimum alveolar concentration. Then, any drug which is contributing to general anesthesia, if there is any drug which is a general anesthetic drug, obviously this general anesthetic drug will cause paralysis of the respiratory muscles, right? At the end, they cause paralysis of respiratory muscles. So, that will lead to decreased minimum alveolar concentration. So, these are the main things. What are they? Hypoxia, hypovolemia, hypothermia, hyponatremia, hypocalcemia. Then hypercapnia. Then as age increases, minimum alveolar concentration will decrease by 6% per decade, or in pregnancy minimum alveolar concentration will decrease. In acute alcohol intoxication and in drugs which cause general anesthesia or in chronic amphetamine, you see decrease in minimum alveolar concentration. Now, what are the conditions where there is increase in minimum alveolar concentration? It's easy to remember. It is increase. So, obviously hyperthermia or hypernatremia. So, here there is increase in minimum alveolar concentration. Then if you see infants, obviously as age increases, the minimum alveolar concentration will decrease, right? So, infants has highest minimum alveolar concentration. Chronic alcohol intoxication will have increased minimum alveolar concentration. Why? Because they become adapted. So, because of becoming adaptive, so there will be increased minimum alveolar concentration. This is one exception. Amphetamine increases the minimum alveolar concentration. It is just an exception. So, this is the thing. So, what are the conditions which increase minimum alveolar concentration? They are hyperthermia, hypernatremia, infants have highest minimum alveolar concentration, and acute amphetamine and chronic alcoholic intoxication will increase minimum alveolar concentration. Then in inhalational anesthetic, the next important thing is about the blood gas partition coefficient or blood gas solubility or diffusion coefficient. In this when the blood gas solubility will increase, okay, this will decrease the speed of induction, right? If blood gas solubility is less, then it goes to their respective organs and easily gets diffused into their respective organs. But if the blood gas solubility is more, it is easily soluble in the blood. So, free form is less. Because free form is less, the induction is very slow. So, you should know this. Values for different inhalational anesthetics. So, these include, if you see, blood gas solubility of halothane is 2 to 2.5. 2.25. Even this is easy to remember. I'll tell you. See, for blood gas solubility of halothane is 2.25. Now, you will have to do half. If you do this half, then blood gas solubility for isoflurane will come as 1.12 or something. So, it is 1.3. When you do this half, then the blood gas solubility of sevoflurane you will get, that is 0.62, right? 1.3 is nothing but 0.65. So, it is almost equal, almost nearer, that is 0.63. And blood gas solubility of desflurane is 0.45. This is 3/4, or you can remember almost nearer to half. Okay, that is desflurane. So, among all these, the fastest or speed of induction is more for desflurane. The speed of induction is slow for halothane, which has high blood gas solubility. So, it's simple. You can remember this as CNS concentration of inhalational agent is directly proportional to alveolar concentration. That means, if alveolar concentration is more, then obviously the CNS concentration of that inhalational agent will be more. Then, blood gas solubility is inversely proportional to the speed of induction. If blood gas solubility is more, then the gas will get solubilized in the blood. So, as a result, free form is very less. So, as a result, it has less speed of induction, right? Then, rate of induction of any agent can be increased by, okay, for increasing the rate of induction, we need low blood gas solubility, second gas effect, or high alveolar ventilation. So, all these will increase the speed of or rate of induction of anesthesia, right? Next, the next drug. So, we will see some important points. So, if you see this drug sevoflurane, Okay, sevoflurane is inhalational induction of choice for children. So it is inhalational induction of choice for children. Okay, it has low blood gas solubility, so it has faster recovery also. Then we have, among all the drugs, sevoflurane and desflurane has less blood gas solubility, so they have highest induction, right? So because of that, higher in faster induction, so they can be used for daycare surgery. So because of the faster induction, they can be used for daycare surgery, and these will also show the side effects of post-operative delirium and hallucination, especially in the pediatric patients. So these will show post-operative delirium and hallucinations. So now let us learn the differences between the all the drugs. Okay, so we will see main differences. So if you see, we are going to learn about the differences of these drugs. We are going to learn halothane, isoflurane, sevoflurane and desflurane, okay, and their differences. So if you see, first halothane. Halothane is a halogenated ethane, whereas all the others are halogenated ethers. All are halogenated. The only thing that you have to remember is all are ethers, while halothane is ethane. Okay, next, if you see isoflurane, it is the structural analog of isoflurane or enflurane or fluorinated isoflurane. Okay, this is not necessary. What is important in this is this desflurane has the highest fluoride content. See, sevoflurane has 7 atoms of fluoride, whereas desflurane has 6 atoms of fluoride. But still, desflurane has highest fluoride content, because this highest fluoride content is based on the other compounds, taking into account the other compounds also, right? So desflurane has highest fluoride content, right? Next, if you see, in all these, halothane, isoflurane, sevoflurane, all these have boiling point of 50 plus or minus 2. What is important here is this desflurane will boil at room temperature. Because this desflurane will boil at room temperature, there is some special vaporizer which is used for storage of this desflurane, that is called as TEC 6. TEC 6 is the special vaporizer which is used in the storage and delivery of desflurane. Okay, then the color coding is very important. The color coding of halothane is red, color coding of isoflurane is purple, color coding of sevoflurane is yellow, the color coding of desflurane is blue. Okay, so these are the color codings of these drugs, which is important. Then we have seen minimum alveolar concentration will increases from halothane to desflurane, whereas blood gas solubility will decrease from halothane to desflurane. Then if you see the blood gas soluble, so this halothane is most potent, whereas desflurane is least potent but faster induction and faster recovery agent. Okay, then if you see the stability, all the drugs are stable except halothane, which is most unstable. Because it is most unstable, we use a preservative for halothane, which is thymol 0.01% is used as a preservative. Okay, next if you see some more differences, we will see the metabolism first. The metabolism is halothane undergoes metabolism by acyl halide. Okay, it undergoes metabolism, 30% is metabolized by acyl halide. This causes a side effect which is autoimmune hepatitis. Halothane causes autoimmune hepatitis, whereas sevoflurane produces compound A in 2 to 4% of cases, and this compound A is nephrotoxic. Okay, sevoflurane is nephrotoxic. As a result, sevoflurane is nephrotoxic. Now the important thing is, so halothane has good smell. You can use this halothane has both induction, for both induction and maintenance. Halothane can be used both as induction and maintenance, whereas sevoflurane, it has sweet smell and it is used as maintenance, induction and maintenance, that is second agent of choice for maintenance. Whereas desflurane is an irritant, so it is the agent of choice, that is first agent of choice for maintenance. So this is one thing which you have to very well remember. So irritants are only two. We have desflurane and isoflurane are the irritants. The rest two have good smell. Isoflurane and desflurane are irritants. Now if you see the action on central nervous system, the action of central nervous system, if you see, all these causes decrease in cerebral metabolic requirement of oxygen. All these will increase cerebral blood flow and increase intracranial pressure. But among all these can be used in neurosurgery except halothane, which is contraindicated in neurosurgery. And if you see sevoflurane, with sevoflurane seizures have been reported. Sevoflurane seizures have been reported, and neurosurgery is contraindicated in halothane. This you should remember. Then if you see cardiovascular system, all are cardiostable except halothane, which causes direct myocardial depression action. So halothane causes direct myocardial depressant action. So as a result, it decreases the activity of SA node, decreases heart rate, decreases cardiac output, decreases BP also. But it has one thing, that is it sensitizes the heart to arrhythmogenic effect of catecholamines. So it sensitizes the heart to arrhythmogenic effect of catecholamines. Okay, one more important thing is isoflurane. Isoflurane shows a phenomenon called as coronary steal phenomenon. Isoflurane shows coronary steal phenomenon, whereas halothane causes sensitizes the heart maximum to arrhythmogenic effect of catecholamines, right? Then if you see respiratory system, all these will decrease the respiratory center. All these will cause hypoxic and blunting of hypoxic and hypercapnic drive. All these cause bronchodilation, but the best bronchodilator is halothane. Second best bronchodilator is sevoflurane. Okay, best bronchodilator is halothane and second best bronchodilator is sevoflurane. Hypoxic pulmonary vasoconstriction has been blunted by inhalational anesthetics. Inhalational anesthetics will stop this hypoxic pulmonary vasoconstriction. Okay, so they will depress the respiratory center. Next if you see in hepatic, as I have already said, this halothane will cause autoimmune hepatitis, and it will also disrupt the dual blood supply of liver, and as a result this is contraindicated in hepatic surgery. What is the agent of choice in hepatic surgery? Desflurane is the agent of choice in hepatic surgery. Then if you see in the renal system, also desflurane is the agent of choice in renal system, but the sevoflurane will produce compound A, which is nephrotoxic, as I have already told you. Okay, next uterus, all these are better uterine relaxants. So all these will cause loss of consciousness, loss of reflex response. All these will cause amnesia, muscle relaxation, and there is no analgesia. Okay, so this is about the different inhalational agents. So next let us learn a few points about halothane hepatitis. So what are you going to see in halothane hepatitis? We have two types of halothane hepatitis, that is we have type 1 and type 2. This type 1 is called as acute self-limiting hepatitis, that is it gets resolved on its own. This is acute self-limiting hepatitis which gets resolved on its own, whereas in type 2 we have acute necrotizing hepatitis. Here this acute necrotizing hepatitis will take time for it to resolve. In type 1 it takes 3 to 6 weeks post exposure to, it occurs 3 to 6 weeks post exposure to halothane. Okay, and here liver function tests are deranged. Then what are the predisposing factors of this halothane? The predisposing factors include, we have female sex will predispose to the halothane hepatitis, obesity, middle-aged female sex, obesity, middle-aged, pre-existing liver function, and reuse of halothane within 3 to 6 months. All these are predisposing factors for halothane hepatitis. Okay, then what are the factors which decrease or increase the EEG activity? These are also important. Factors which decrease the EEG activity and factors which increase the EEG activity. Factors which decrease, it's easier to remember, these will decrease. So everything decrease, like hypoxia, hypovolemia, hypothermia, except carbon dioxide, that is hypercapnia. Always carbon dioxide will be in the opposite way. So factors which decrease EEG are hypoxia, hypoxia, hypercapnia, hypovolemia, then hypothermia, and obviously all inhalational and intravenous anesthetic agents will decrease the EEG. Okay, then what are the factors which increase the EEG? Factors which increase the EEG are, see, these are also the similar but early stages. See, all those factors which decrease the EEG also increase the EEG, but they are their early stages. Early stages of hypoxia, hypercapnia, hypovolemia and hypothermia will decrease the EEG. Along with that, ketamine and nitrous oxide will also decrease the EEG. Will also increase the EEG. Ketamine and nitrous oxide will increase the EEG. Okay, now we have something called as CNS coupling. What is CNS coupling? In CNS coupling, the central blood flow is directly proportional to cerebral metabolic requirement of oxygen. It's not central blood flow, I'm really sorry, this is cerebral blood flow. Cerebral blood flow is directly proportional to cerebral metabolic oxygen requirement. That is called as CNS coupling. Then we can divide the whole drugs into, we have the other drugs. Okay, the other drugs are enflurane. What is enflurane? Enflurane is actually isomer of isoflurane, and this enflurane is not used in clinical practice now. Why is it not used in clinical practice? Because it has a side effect, that is it precipitates epilepsy. Because of this epilepsy effect, it is not used in the clinical practice now. Then we have one more drug, which is methoxyflurane. What is this methoxyflurane? This methoxyflurane has the highest fluoride content. Because of its highest fluoride content, it is the most nephrotoxic drug. Methoxyflurane is the most nephrotoxic drug. Because of its highest nephrotoxic drug, this is also not in use now. It is most potent, but okay, this is a high output. Methoxyflurane is a high output diuretic. Okay, so this is about the methoxyflurane. Next, let us learn a few points about malignant hyperthermia. Okay, so this malignant hyperthermia is a disorder which is seen due to, it is a pharmacogenetic disease. Here the problem is in ryanodine receptors. Okay, there are some drugs which are triggering this malignant hyperthermia. These drugs list is very important. The drugs which trigger malignant hyperthermia are succinylcholine, halogenated inhalational agent. Drugs triggering the malignant hyperthermia include succinylcholine, halogenated inhalational agent, and also lignocaine. These are the drugs which are triggering the malignant hyperthermia. So it is an autosomal dominant form. This you should remember, it is an autosomal dominant form. What does these do? These will lead to hypermetabolism reactions. That means this will cause hypercapnia, hypothermia, it causes hypertension, tachycardia and arrhythmias. Because this malignant hyperthermia causes lysis of cells, it also causes hyperkalemia, acidosis, myoglobinuria, rhabdomyolysis. Here because of cell lysis, whenever, see it's easy, whenever there is lysis of cells, this cells, the myoglobin, the lysis is mainly in the muscle cells. Okay, whenever there is damage or destruction of muscle cells, these muscle cells will release myoglobin which is present in them. So that released myoglobin will occur in the urine, and that is called as myoglobinuria. Rhabdomyolysis is breakdown of the muscle cells. When the myoglobin enters the urine, this will damage the kidney, resulting in renal failure. It also in the cell we have increased calcium. The cell contains potassium. The main intracellular ion is potassium. Once the cell undergoes lysis, the potassium is released into the external environment, causing hyperkalemia. So we have acidosis, hyperkalemia, myoglobinuria, rhabdomyolysis, renal failure which occurs due to cell lysis. Because of hypermetabolism, it causes hypertension, tachycardia and arrhythmias. Okay, how are you going to treat the disease? The treatment of disease is simple. You should give IV dantrolene infusion should be given. Okay, so this is about malignant hyperthermia. Now after this malignant hyperthermia, we will see some more drugs. Okay, inhalational anesthetic agent, older inhalational anesthetic agent we will see. Okay, one of them is propofol. See, this propofol is an anesthetic of choice. Sorry, I'm really sorry. This propofol is anesthetic of choice for malignant hyperthermia. Okay, yeah. Now, so let us now learn about the inhalational anesthetics. So the first inhalational anesthetic which I would like, older inhalational anesthetics, is ether. If you see, among all the inhalational anesthetic, ether is the first anesthetic which has been discovered, and that is the reason why we call it as 16th October as World Ether Day, where ether is used as anesthetic for the first time on 16th October 1846. What are the advantages of ether? If you see, ether is cardiovascular stable. Okay, it is the following advantages. It is cardiovascular stable. Okay, it has less, the hypoxia and hypercapnic drive is less affected. It is actually a positive symptom. See, it is cardiovascular stable, hypoxia and hypercapnic drive is less affected. Okay, it is good analgesia, good muscle relaxant, good bronchodilator, and it is relatively cheap. But what are the disadvantages? It is an irritant. Because of this irritant nature, it causes laryngospasm. It causes stimulation of trachea, bronchial glands and serous glands. It causes stimulation of trachea, bronchial gland and serous gland. It can be highly inflammable, and it shows slow induction and recovery. So these are the disadvantages of ether. What are they? It causes slow induction and recovery. It is an irritant, so it can lead to laryngospasm. It causes hyperstimulation of trachea, bronchial mucus and serous glands, and it is highly inflammable. So this is about ether. Now the next anesthetic is nitrous oxide. So if you see in the nitrous oxide, it produces blue color. It is seen in blue colored cylinder. Its spin index system is 3.5. The minimum alveolar concentration of this nitrous oxide is 104. Blood gas solubility is 0.45. And if you see, this nitrous oxide is the faster acting agent, and it is a good analgesic. Right? Next we have one more drug which is called as Entonox. This is a newer drug which is nitrous oxide plus oxygen. We can use 50% of nitrous oxide can be combined with 50% of oxygen, leading to formation of this Entonox. This is present in the cylinder form, and this cylinder has blue body and white shoulders. Entonox has blue body, so it is something like this. It has blue body, may not be this blue, it will be darker blue, but still, and it will have white shoulders. Okay, so it has blue body and white shoulders. Okay, so that is Entonox. So if you see, the pin index system of this Entonox is 7. It is used for analgesia. Mainly it is used in labor and dental analgesia. It is used in labor and dental analgesia. It cannot be used for anesthesia. Okay, it is used mainly in labor and dental analgesia. Remember, it is not used, can't be used. It is not used or can't be used as anesthesia. It is a sympathomimetic drug. Because of it, it increases heart rate and BP. It is cardiovascular unstable. So because of all these contraindications, it is contraindicated in laser surgery. It cannot be used for anesthesia. It increases blood pressure and heart rate. It is CVS unstable. It is a supporter of combustion, and it is contraindicated for laser surgery. So cannot be used as used for anesthesia. Okay, next, management of airway fire. Now how are you going to manage this airway fire? whenever there is airway fire, then you will have to first disconnect the circuit. First and foremost, disconnection of the circuit. Then you will have to use, in order to extinguish fire, you can use normal saline or distilled water filled syringes are poured onto the area to extinguish the fire. Normal saline and distilled water are poured to extinguish the fire. Remove the damaged endotracheal tube and now re-intubate the patient with fresh endotracheal tube, and also give IV antibiotics and IV steroids, and also give IV antibiotics and IV steroids. What does these do? These IV antibiotics and IV steroids will expand the air containing cavity in the body. So we have to first disconnect the circuit, then normal saline or distilled water filled syringes are used to extinguish the fire. Then we will have to remove the endotracheal tube and re-intubate with the fresh endotracheal tube. Then you can use IV antibiotics plus IV steroids can be used, which will expand the air containing cavity. Now, what are the absolute contraindications of nitrous oxide? These are very important. Absolute contraindications of nitrous oxide are pneumothorax or pneumoperitoneum, intestinal obstruction, cochlear implant surgery, vitreoretinal surgery, laser surgery. So, absolute contraindications are pneumothorax or pneumopericardium, intestinal obstruction, cochlear transplant surgery. Then we have vitreoretinal surgery and laser surgery. Intestinal obstruction, cochlear implant surgery, vitreoretinal surgery and laser surgery. All these are the absolute contraindications of nitrous oxide. Okay, nitrous oxide also inhibits vitamin B12 dependent enzymes, and thus it causes manifestations of vitamin B12 deficiency. That includes peripheral neuropathy, it causes megaloblastic anemia, and it causes bone marrow suppression. Then we have something called as second gas effect in nitrous oxide. One more thing which is called a second gas effect in nitrous oxide is important. What is this second gas effect? It is the effect of, once you have given the nitrous oxide, then this will increase the concentration of accompanying gas in the alveoli. So along with nitrous oxide, if you give the other gas, this will make the speed of induction faster. Okay, that is second gas effect. Then we have diffusion hypoxia also. What is this diffusion hypoxia? This diffusion hypoxia is here whenever there is nitrous oxide is given. Okay, the nitrous oxide which is present in the blood, it goes very fast into the alveoli. From the blood, this nitrous oxide will go into the alveoli very faster. Okay, and this leads to faster reversal of general anesthesia. But this will lead to hypoxia. Why? Because of the diffusion of nitrous oxide from the blood to the alveoli, there will be less oxygen which will enter the alveoli. So because there will be less gaseous exchange, and as a result this will lead to hypoxia. So hypoxia occurring because of diffusion of nitrous oxide into the alveoli from blood is called as diffusion hypoxia. The treatment of this is called as we should give 100% oxygen. This diffusion or hypoxia is also called as Fink effect or third gas effect. Okay, then the next drug is xenon. Okay, what do you see in xenon? So what is xenon? Xenon is an inert gas. The minimum alveolar concentration of xenon is 70. Blood gas solubility of xenon is 0.17. Minimum alveolar concentration is 70. Blood gas solubility is 0.19. It is also a better analgesic, not a supporter of combustion. Unlike nitrous oxide, which is a supporter of combustion, it is CVS stable. It is metabolically inert. It is CVS stable, metabolically inert and environmental friendly. It does not cause any type of atmospheric pollution. But the problem here is this xenon is very costly. So you should not use this xenon for normal conditions. So all this is very important. Many times this question is asked. All the agents of inhalational agents are GABA receptors, which act on GABA receptors in brain. Except we have 3 which act on NMDA receptor. where they are ketamine, xenon and nitrous oxide will act on NMDA receptors. So this is about inhalational anesthetics. So thank you guys for watching my lecture. In the next class, let us now learn, in the next class we will learn about IV anesthetics. Thank you for watching my lecture. Thank you.